got about 10 years in AppSec, a little over 10 years. I love this space. I've done everything that you can imagine: Waterfall, DevOps, Agile. Actually, show of hands, who here is a developer? Okay, how about quality? All right, couple. Security? Awesome. Operations? Couple. Excellent. Who's doing Waterfall right now? Nobody. Come on. There's like 3 people that don't want to raise their hands. Agile? Agile? How about DevOps? Couple. And then a bunch of you didn't raise your hand, so I don't know what the hell you're doing. Okay, so we're going to talk about why AppSec is important, how it's done today, how that needs to change, especially as we're talking about moving into DevOps. So the problem, as we talked about this morning in the OWASP talk, is these applications are as risky as they've ever been, right? Hard-coded passwords, risky or broken crypto, open to redirect attacks. It doesn't end. Most of the applications that we see, any Veracode customers in here? Nobody. Oh, room full of prospects. Awesome. Most of the applications we see fail the basic OWASP top 10. And, by the way, most of the attacks come through the application layer, right? So applications are the thing that's made to take data in and out of the enterprise. So we do a lot of hardening on the outside, with endpoints and intrusion protection, intrusion detection, all of those things. Those things are great, except that we got these things that we stand up right in our perimeter that allow free access. So if we have things like cross-site scripting and SQL injection in our applications, it doesn't matter what you did on the outside, because those those attackers can still get at it. And it doesn't always come through the front door. So a lot of times when I talk to people about their AppSec program, they're like, well, we're just going to do the most important applications. Who's heard that? What are my most important applications? Well, who cares if you put a steel door on the front of your house if you leave all the windows open, right? They will find a way in. The Target breach, classic example. They didn't go in through Target.com. They went in through an HVAC supplier's billing website, right? They socially engineered in from there, got into the network, and then they were everywhere. So business mandates. Business wants it better, faster, and cheaper. There's always trade-offs with those, right? How many do we usually get to pick? Right? As Mo said, you only get to pick 2, right? You can't do them all, although DevOps is the methodology that's trying to solve all of these problems at the same time. So time frames. If we're doing Waterfall, 1 to 4 releases a year. That's about what you're going to get out of that methodology. And you're talking about a team of 50, 100, 150 people. I've worked on projects that big in Waterfall years and years ago. When we get to Agile, now we're talking about at least once a month, probably a couple times a month. So who's doing about that rate for those that raise their hand on Agile? Yeah, you're doing Agile well if you can get there. Now DevOps, especially so if you look at this through the security lens, we're shipping hundreds of times a year. Sometimes 5, 10, 20 times a day. How's a security guy supposed to keep up with that? I saw the talk this morning where they were talking about security and security testing and people. You can't have people in this process. It doesn't work. You can't release 10 times a day if you have a 3-day test cycle where someone needs to sit down and work on it. So you need to find a different way to get at your application security to make sure you don't have vulnerabilities. Great quote here, Nathan Harvey from Chef. The thing I like about this is it talks about an organizational change. This isn't about developers, it's not about operations, it's not about security, it's about everybody. So when you're releasing hundreds of times a year, you have to think differently about everything. Your product owner has to think differently about their backlog. How do I keep that backlog full as you guys are draining it faster and faster? How do I train people that are in my support organization? Last thing you want is someone to pick up the phone, call support, say, hey, I'm having a problem with that new feature you released. And they're like, what feature? I don't know what you're talking about. So how do you keep them up to date on all of this stuff? So you have to talk about this from an entire organizational perspective. All right, so for those of you not doing DevOps, this is just a quick primer. Basic development cycle, right? This is typical waterfall, where we shift through these phases, requirements to design and coding and testing, production release. One of the things I have to talk to, especially in front of non-technical audiences, is that stuff isn't really different when you get to DevOps. Even people that are in Agile that want to get to DevOps, it's not as different as you might think. So right here's your basic waterfall where we're doing a very long time span, right? Now when we do Agile, we're breaking that down into smaller chunks. We got our sprints, when it's typically going to be more than 4 against one waterfall release, but for the purpose of time and space here, we're doing smaller chunks. We're accumulating less change and releasing more frequently, which means we're getting value to the customer sooner. When we're doing DevOps, if we're doing it really well, it's single piece flow, right? I'm a developer, pick up a piece of functionality, I code it, I check it in, and it goes to production. That's it. There's no sprint demos, there's none of that stuff. It passes tests, and it goes to production. Think about how much that you can get to the customer, how much faster, right? We are now spinning as fast as we can if we can get to that single piece flow. And when we do re-architecture, so who's here is coding on a monolithic application? Okay, who's breaking that down into microservices? Right, most people. So when you're doing microservices, guess what? It's happening everywhere all the time. You don't know when something's shipping. It's pretty much always shipping from somewhere. So you have to have tests that you trust and be able to test it in environments that are exactly like production. So let's talk a little bit about why DevOps. How did we get here? So this is a typical waterfall model where I've got my silos of planning and development and quality and operations. And the biggest problem with this is I lose my business intent the second I ship it over the wall. So my product owner says, hey, I want you to go build this. By the time it gets into production, the operations guys look at it, they have no idea why you built it. They have no idea how it's supposed to work. They just know how it works. And it's usually on fire. Same thing with application knowledge. The second the developer's done writing it, we start losing that fidelity. We don't understand how it was built. Again, the operation guys know how it works. It works as it was coded to work, not necessarily the way the developer meant it to work. And in the opposite case, our operational knowledge doesn't flow back upstream very well. So they know how it works. They know all the magic tricks that they have to do and the little scriptlets that they have to run to kill this process or reboot that machine to keep the whole production environment up and running, but it never really gets all the way back up to the top of that cycle. So in Agile, what's typically done, right, we've got our product owner, we've got our developer, we've got our QA, we've merged them into one team. Now they have to think about this stuff together, so the quality guys have more of an impact on the final quality of that product. And now we see this shift, right? Our business intent and our application knowledge have stronger fidelity, but we're still losing that last piece. We still get to operations and they get what they get. And same thing with the operational knowledge. So in DevOps, it's really breaking down that last wall such that we can have continuity across them. The operations guys are in the room while you're talking about the new features. They can tell you personally what it takes to run that application. In fact, in real good DevOps teams, everyone's operations. So you all have to think about it, right? All the developers wear a pager. Who's here doing DevOps and has to do pager duty or something like that? Nobody. One? Okay, one. My Metallica guy over here. Yeah, so in real good DevOps, you're talking about a team of 6, 8, 10 people. Everyone is responsible for everything. Quality is everybody's job. Security is everybody's job. Agile process. Anyone not familiar with this? So just quickly, right? We got our backlog, it's prioritized. We go to our planning session, we do our planning poker, we test to make sure that we understand the stories that we're about to do. We do our stand-ups, we track the progress, we get to the end, and we hope that we did everything right. Right? We do our demo, and then we do our retrospectives. Now what happens is, security is usually here. Who's my security guys again? Who feels like that guy? Yeah. Like, holy crap, I hope they're doing it right. And really what you guys end up fighting for is budget. So they get to the end, usually, right? They don't do the testing until they have a release candidate in their hand. They're like, hey, I'm ready to release today. And then you do some testing. You're like, hey, here's a sheet of 50 things I need you guys to go fix now because it's broken. They said, well, wait a minute. Can we just do the most important ones? Who's had that conversation? I just want to do maybe the top 3. How about that? Can we do that? And the rest of it sinks to the bottom of the backlog, never to be seen or heard from again. And all of these vulnerabilities are sitting out in your production environment. Technology. All right, so Waterfall. Again, if I'm releasing 1 to 4 times a year, I have to do something that really sucks. I hate it. But I will do it once a year. And it's going to take me 2 weeks to automate it. Who automates it? Nobody. It doesn't make economic sense. I'll just do it again. Fine. I'll hump the rocks up the hill. Get to Agile, we start throwing some machinery in here. This is where we need to start putting in these practices. So for those of you that aren't doing DevOps, this stuff really applies to you as well. We need to have repeatable processes, right? It can't be humans all the time. It has to be machines, and it has to be on demand. Because when we get to DevOps, if you can automate it, you damn well better. Because think about this. If I had a 2-line change in my program and I need to release it, if my release cycle is 2 weeks, what the hell? How do I get that out into production now, right? The whole point of DevOps is to move value to the customer as quickly as possible. You have to find a way through things like CICD to get that time frame down such that it's repeatable and nearly free. Okay, so whose AppSec program looks like this? Anybody? Big gate at the end? Or this? That's the one that I see most often. And again, it's because as a development team, we don't bother thinking about security till the very end. And then we run our testing, we're like, oh crap, now what? And you know what? Here comes the truck down the road with the release candidate, and I see 1 or 2 outcomes typically. This one, where there really isn't a mandate. They get to the gate, they're like, okay, I'm just going to drive around, nobody put up a fence here, or it's the inevitable phone call from the VP saying, hey guys, you got to let them go because I got to release this stuff, and this is how I get measured every year, and I'll rank you. Or it's this one. There really is a gate. You thought it was just a mirage. And you were wrong, right? So those that have a really strong security program, this is what happens. And that looks terrible on security. It looks terrible for the development teams because they have no good process, no repeatability. They don't look like they know what they're doing. All right, so typical DevOps process. Cradle to grave. The team owns what they do. From the time we start planning till the time we turn it off, right? And where's security in this? Again, typically it's here, but it really needs to be here, right? You got to think about it from day one so you're not making silly mistakes in your code. Because in that past step when you hit that gate, it doesn't feel good for anybody. All right, so here's the strategy. I've boiled this down to really the most important things. Again, I trimmed 15 minutes off this talk. Integration and automation, right? Repeatability, on demand. And what I call the 3-legged bar stool of application security. Who here, when they went to school, took application security coding courses? Anybody? Nope. Neither did I. I graduated 25 years ago. They didn't have it then. Right? We need to train our workforce. It is a carrying cost. We can't just throw everyone out and go buy new ones because, by the way, none of the new ones are going to know it either. It's starting to creep into programs in schools, but not nearly enough. We need to help developers fix what they find. And as a developer, you should be demanding this. If the security team is going to come in and say, no OWASP top 10 vulnerabilities. It's like, okay, when I find one and I don't understand it, you're going to need to help me. And they need to be there. If you're in the security field, you have to be the one that helps them with this. And scanning early and scanning often, the whole DevOps thing is fail fast. right? The second I see a problem, I want to fail. Whether that be one of my unit tests or whether that be my security tests. Whatever testing I'm doing, I want to know that it's wrong now because it's a hell of a lot cheaper to fix it now than it is when I'm already pulling the truck back off the gate. All right, so this is a CICD pipeline for one of the microservices that one of my teams built. My direction to them at the time was, I want a lights-out deploy. There's one human element in this, besides the person actually making the change. So we do peer code reviews. Anybody do those? Okay, a couple. We do a peer code review for everything that goes into my repository. But after that, nothing. No human hands touch this damn thing. Period. Because I want to move it as quickly as possible. All right, so here's my developer. They pick up their stuff. They come in and do their build. And guess what? I want them to run static analysis. I want to know if there's vulnerabilities in the code before it hits my repository. I do not allow insecure code into my repository. Now, I have a 10-and-a-half-year-old AppSec program, so it's easy for me to say it was hard for me to get there. Okay? I come from a security company. We take this stuff pretty damn seriously. For you guys, if you're just rolling out AppSec, who has an AppSec program in their company? Nobody? Come on now. Okay, one. I got one up here. But you guys are all at a security conference. Figure that out. It's mandatory. They have to double check the code. For anyone that's just rolling out an AppSec program, let's not put any new stuff on the pile. So right now, if I take your application on baseline, I'm going to find some pile of stuff that needs to go get done that you didn't know about before. Well, I didn't get it there in a day, and I'm not going to fix it in a day, so let's treat that differently, right? I'm going to have to put some kind of program in place to think about how to eat down that technical debt. But in the meantime, I need to train my developers such that they don't check in new stuff because I don't want to make that pile any bigger. So that's a good goal for you when you first roll out your programs. And again, they have to document this before checking. No vulnerabilities, no known vulnerabilities get into my source control. I'm going to find it later on, and you'll see that. So on every check-in now, we hit my CICD pipeline. So this is continuous integration, continuous delivery, or continuous deployment. Jenkins comes up, runs build. I run static analysis. And I run unit tests at the same time. Now, everything that happened before check-in, those are preventative, right? I'm preventing things from getting into my repository. I'm also educating my developers. So there are tools available out there that can get you security results for the code that you're writing in seconds. And there's other technologies that will take a little bit longer, but you can secure your code from a static point of view prior to check-in. So again, that's education and prevention. Anything that happens after that, like this static analysis in box 6, is now assurance. This is what lets the security guys sleep at night. And by the way, will cause it to fail. So I'm going to know if someone didn't do their static analysis. I have a result now. This is, of course, the continuous integration portion of that pipeline. This code is either good or not good based on those tests, and I trust those tests. You have to. If it's broken, fail the build. Synchronize the backlog. Nice try, guys. Do it again. I got it. If it does pass, now we're going to start moving it closer to my production site, right? So we're going to go into my QA environment, my quality environment. I'm going to move it to staging. I might move it to some UAT. Who here does pen testing in their organization? All right, so for those of you, some people look at this and start to panic, like, shit, where does pen testing go? For me, in this AppSec program, all pen testing and secure code reviews, anything that requires people and time, happens before number 4, before check-in. When I say check-in, I mean check-in to trunk, right? Once it gets the trunk, it hits the pipeline and we go. If you need to do something else, then you check it into a branch. We move it into some other environment. By the way, its infrastructure as code. It looks the same as every other environment that I have, so you know when you're pen testing it, it's going to be the same when I get it into production. So we're going to test it there. We're going to do our code reviews there. And when that's done, they're going to merge it into trunk. So that's my check into trunk, and it goes. So there is time for people process, which is what you want to do behind your check-ins. You don't want to slow the whole team down. Anything that goes into trunk is a release candidate, and you need to treat it that way. All right, so I get into my QA environment. I'm going to run more testing. Now I'm in an operating environment. I'm with all of those hundreds of microservices that I got kicking around, and I'm going to run some dynamic analysis. In this case, this is a single-page app. It takes 10 minutes to run dynamic analysis against it. By the way, the static analysis up there takes about 3 or 4 minutes to run. It's very small, it's a microservice, not very complex. I'm also going to run some regression testing. Let's make sure we're not breaking anything, because guess whose page is going to go off? Mine. I'm not going to be happy about it. And again, I'm going to come out with pass or fail. If it passes, we're going to keep moving. We go from QA to staging to production. This is, of course, the CD, continuous deployment, or continuous delivery portion of my pipeline. There's no emails that ask for permission, because who's ever seen one that's not a rubber stamp? Can I go to production? Yeah, sure. It's like you didn't even hit send yet. You get the automatic response from it. All right, training. Again, you have to train them. They don't know what they're doing. It's not their fault. They just never taught what to do. Developers are smart. Who here thinks they're a superstar developer? Nobody? I am. Well, your guys' reviews at the end of the year must be awesome. Well, I think I did okay this year. So, security team, you need to help provide this training. This can be on-demand stuff, so we want to do some e-learning. That's good stuff. We also want to do some instructor-led stuff. Who likes free pizza? There we go. So, what I talk about is doing it based on your findings. So once you've baselined applications, you have some set of findings, you know what your teams are struggling with, and you can measure this over time. So big surprise, maybe it's SQL injection, right? So I'll take a room like this, I'll fill it full of developers and pizza. Of course, the pizza has to be here first so the developers don't come. So get the order right. Fill it with developers and pizza, talk to them for an hour, right? Why would I send them to a 3 or 4 hour online e-learning security coding course when really what I want to do is talk to them for an hour about SQL injection, how we can wipe it off the face of the planet. Let's get rid of it in my organization. And now, by the way, if you're doing these scans regularly, you're going to see if you made progress. You're going to see if your training helped. Right? Now there's an ROI. Now I can go back to management and say, hey, look what I did. I wiped out SQL injection. Can I have more money? Can we do some more of this stuff? And it equates to more pizza. Security guys. You have to understand what the developer is struggling with. Who here has read the Phoenix Project? Ooh, not many. Put that on your list. Read the Phoenix Project. That's a great starter. And then this one, DevOps Handbook. In depth about DevOps practices with tons of case studies on how it has worked and how it has benefited other organizations. I've now gone steps further into this. I've started looking at the Toyota way and lean manufacturing, because that's where all this stuff came from. It is amazing what you can accomplish if you do it well. Remediation coaching, we have to help them fix it. Great, we find a bunch of stuff. You don't just leave it at the flaming bag of poo on their doorstep and run away. I got to stay there and help them fix this stuff. So security guys, you need to get versed in development. You need to be able to talk them through, how does this get owned? How can I protect myself from it? Some of this stuff is super easy. And there's no reason that they should be coding it that way in the first place. In fact, if you get to this point where you're starting to fix stuff, the next thing for you to measure is how many new things show up on the pile. Because a really great AppSec program has decreases in the amount of new vulnerabilities that come into your system. That means the developers, it's coming out of here secure. That's what we want, right? If it goes into my repository secure and working, we get to production that much faster. I don't have to pay the cost of tracking a defect and retests and all those things. Let's deal with those behind that barrier. If we give developers tools to help them understand what they're doing and make it part of their tool chain, it means it has to be part of their daily work. It has to be in the IDE that they use. It has to use the bug tracking system that they use. It can't be a PDF or an Excel spreadsheet that we mail around to everybody. It's like, well, is this the current version? I don't know. Let me go back and check my email. Need to synchronize into their backlogs. Whatever they use, whether that's Jira or TFS or VSTS or what have you, right? We've got to sit in their backlog. And when they start running these tools, developers take a ton of pride in their work. Who takes pride in their work? A couple people. Who doesn't want, as a developer, who doesn't want to check in code and have my peer over there say, holy crap, I wish I could code like that? Right? No one wants to check in this ugly mess and say, sweep under the carpet, nobody look at that code change. I'll just make it really massive, like a 10,000 line code change. They'll never find this shit in there. So if we start giving them the tools to know that they're going to get the rubber chicken hung above their desk because they broke the build, then they're going to start running it before they check in. And they're going to start taking that as part of their save, compile, test. Save, compile, test. Static analysis. If it's fast enough, then they can get those results and they can integrate them into their daily work. So here is an overall security program, right? I want to run training all the time. Again, we have to train them. It's a cost that we have to bear. It's table stakes, really. If we are serious about security, then we need to teach them about security. Static analysis from the day they start coding. And looking at open source vulnerabilities, right? We have to have a good program around those, and we have to make sure they don't get stale. So us developers in the room, it's not, hey, I found one, it works, drop it in. It's like, all right, I'll see you and never. We have to keep up with updates. Not because it's insecure now, which it probably is, we just don't know it yet, but when that CVE drops, they come to us and they say, hey, I need you to upgrade JBoss. You're like, but I'm on version 4. That's going to take about 2 man-years. What do you think? Now what are you going to do? Now that the corporation has 2 shitty problems. It's either, hey, let's shut down development for 2 years while we fix this, or let's live with the vulnerability. Dynamic testing. We've got to do this all the way into production because our infrastructures are not usually the same. We don't usually have infrastructure as code where configurations drift. By the time we get to production, it looks nothing like our test systems. So we've got to make sure we're not doing info leaks in that. Runtime self-protection. This is like a smarter WAF. I'll sum it up like that. And security, you got a ton of work to do here, right? You need to be there in design phase. You need to be there while they're coding. And then you can do your red team and your pen testing activities later, but you need to do that. You need to be there for the whole time. It's not just show up at the end. All right. I came in under budget here. Anybody have any questions? I'll take one question if anyone's got one. Yes, sir.
If you're in a company that doesn't have a CI pipeline,
Yep.
how do you motivate the company to go that way? Like if you're in Agile, how do you go towards DevOps?
Right, so I would start taking a look at how much time it takes you, calendar time, it takes you from the time you have the code change done to the time you get into production. And big or small, it's probably the same, right? You probably have a whole bunch of manual testing. So the first thing you have to do when you move to Agile is start thinking about, let's automate all the tests I have. Let's make those run free. Let's make those run all the time. If you go through the DevOps handbook and really look at the case studies around this stuff, there are companies that are running hundreds of thousands of tests every single day on their entire code base because they're automated. You can't do that. So you have some breach or something, you're going to change your code. It's like, all right, well, it's be a week. Or either that or we don't test it. We just jam it out there. So start showing them the cost of a change over time. All right, guys, thank you very much for your time. And thank you for bringing me out here from New Zealand.